The all-new Dodge Charger, which like your stove now runs on electricity instead of gas, is finally at our track. All 670 horsepower and $86,000 of it. You heard that right, 86 grand. This is fully tested, so you know the drill. We're going to test acceleration, braking, lateral grip. We're gonna weigh this giant thing, and of course, we're going to see how that all comes together on our test track. And we're doing all of that to find out if this is the ultimate evolution of the Charger or if we've just been overcharged. Before we get into all of that, please like and subscribe now, and be sure to visit Edmunds.com, where you'll find all the info and inventory you need for new or used vehicles, including the famous Edmunds rating. The equipment's all hooked up, so we're ready to go. Now, the first thing that we always do for these Excel tests is called a key up run. And for that, we just test the car as it lies. So no special drive modes, and then see how she does. So here we go. Oh, a little bit of wheel spin there. There's 60, there's 90, there's 110, and on the brakes. Get to the end of this Excel straight here. Okay, so for our key up run, we got a result of 3.9 seconds, and that's pretty quick. That's quicker than any Hellcat that we've tested here at our track. So now we're gonna head back down, turn on a few more settings, and see how she does. Okay, so now we're going to run this thing with everything dialed up. We've put it in its drag mode, unlocks all the horsepower. There's a power shot button here, which can add 40 horsepower at times, but don't need it here. Drag mode already unlocks all of that. In the car's race option screens, you have different settings for how basically hard you want the launch to be. So that is right now at maximum. And to turn launch control on, it's super easy. We're in drag mode. There's a little button right here. Left foot hard on the brake, right foot down on the throttle, and then away you go. Oh, there's a lot of slip there. Little wiggle. Definitely quicker though, and cross the line. Okay, so running with the launch control at max, we took 3/10 off, but we did have a bunch of wheel spin off the line. So now we're gonna head back down there, dial in a few things, and try again, see if we can't take off a little bit more time. Okay, so I forgot to mention before, what we're also doing is we used race prep, and that makes sure that the battery is at an optimal temperature for launches, so that's still on. Now, we think that max is probably the best setting to use if you're on like a prep service or if these tires are real hot, but we test on just regular pavement. So I think that the high will actually sort of cut down on the amount of wheel spin and get us off the line even better. Let's see how it does. 3, 2, 1. Oh yeah. Definitely a quicker start there. Less wheel spin. Foot all the way down the floor and through the quarter mile. So that felt a little better, a little bit less wheel spin off the line. And according to our V-Box, 3.5 seconds, that makes this officially the quickest Dodge that we've ever tested. This is actually even quicker than a Dodge Viper that we tested out here. Now, that was a manual to be fair, but still, this is a pretty quick vehicle. The gas cars, they will catch it in the quarter mile because they just kind of power on through. However, when you start to look outside of the Dodge family at other performance EVs, the picture is not so sunny. This Charger is actually a little bit slower than the Hyundai Ioniq 5N and a lot slower than our Tesla Model 3 Performance that we bought. Now, both of those vehicles also cost less than the Charger, and in the case of the Model 3, it's about 30 grand less, and that's not good news for Mopar fans. After a few more validation runs, our best time of 3.5 seconds stuck, and it also covered the quarter mile in 11.6 seconds at 119 miles per hour. The Charger Daytona with the Stage 2 Scat Pack that we're testing today is the most powerful version you can buy with its 670 horsepower, at least until the Banshee shows up.
Take 2.
Keep coming, almost on, coming and stop. Oh my God, it weighs 5,974 pounds. For some perspective, that means that this vehicle weighs just 10 pounds less than a fully loaded Ram 1500 Tungsten, and actually weighs more than a Ram 1500 Tradesman, and it also weighs nearly 2,000 pounds more than our Model 3 Performance that we bought. And it's not just heavy, the Charger is huge. It's almost 2 whole feet longer than the Model 3 and 7 inches wider. Just look at the Charger next to the Model 3. I'd read about how big it was on the spec sheet, but in person, it is just gigantic. We test braking by getting up to 60 miles an hour and slamming on the brakes. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so the good news is there's no brake fade between runs. We averaged 111 feet to stop from 60. The bad news is that's definitely worse than the old Hellcat, which managed 102 feet, but it's pretty close to the Ioniq 5N and Model 3 Performance. Performance EVs are heavy, man. On a normal car, brakes and tires like this thing has would stop it like a brick wall. We'll have to see how those brakes hold up on track later, but first, Skidpad. And we got 1.01 lateral G. That's actually pretty good. It beats the old Hellcat and the Model 3 Performance, and is only a little worse than the Viper. This probably comes down to the sticky Goodyear rubber it's wearing. Those things are like steamrollers. Fast cars and heavy cars both need big brakes, and since the Charger is both, it thankfully comes with upgraded stoppers. We're talking 16-inch rotors front and rear, and 6-piston calipers up front with 4-piston clamps out back. Let's take a moment to address the very loud elephant in the room. That noise that you heard during those acceleration runs, that is a feature, not a bug. It is called Fratzonic, after the Fratzog logo that adorned Dodge muscle back in the 60s. And it is meant to simulate the sound of a V8. And this is what it sounds like. Just kidding, that was a real V8. This is what it actually sounds like. Now we have to admit it does sound a little bit better inside than outside, but no matter where you are, it still ends up sounding artificial, and it can't match the experience of watching a Charger Hellcat fly by you at full throttle. This tries its best, but it's not the same thing at all. Now there is one way in which this vehicle tries to match the Hellcat, and that is on pure volume. Dodge says that the concept version of this vehicle could produce 126 decibels from its exhaust, and that's actually louder than a Hellcat. So this being Edmunds, we gotta test that out for ourselves. To do that, we're going to turn to our resident sound expert, Albert Hernandez, and his decibel meter. Let's fire it up. All right, let's see it. Oh, that's pretty close. 125.2. Not bad. That's just what you want, a loud noise that doesn't sound good. The good news is, though, you can just turn it off. And of course, we put the new Charger on the Edmunds EV range test. Now, for our range test, we fill the vehicle all the way up so it has a full battery, and then we drive it in a mix of city and highway driving, about 60% city and 40% highway, because that is the closest to the way that people use cars day to day. Now we drive it until there's about 10 miles of range remaining for safety, and then get back to the office and plug it in and add the remaining range to the travel range to give you that final Edmunds EV range figure. In the Charger's case, expectations were not high, and that's because with the summer tire on, this thing only has 216 miles of estimated range versus 241 miles without the sticky tires. However, in our testing, it blew way past that and actually covered 255.1 miles. Now, that's not a great figure by any stretch, but it does make the vehicle a lot more usable in the day-to-day. All right, enough of that. Let's see how this thing feels on our test track. So you hear all those tested numbers on the Dodge Charger, and you may think to yourself, yeah, something that can do 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds and pull 1.01 G on the Skidpad should be pretty fun around the track. And unfortunately, it somehow feels less than the sum of its parts. Now, there are a few reasons for that, but I think that the biggest one is just that the handling is, it's all over the place. This car loves to understeer. The nose just kind of pushes at really every opportunity. And if you're coming down into a corner like this, you really try to tuck it down, it just shoves and shoves and shoves on you. Like if you enter a corner, you better be pointed right at the apex because there's no correcting. The steering feel is pretty much non-existent. You're gonna feel kind of everything through your butt before you feel it through the wheel. Even when we were doing our braking runs, if you want to sort of feel if the car was shimmying left and right, which it was just a hair, I just felt that through the seat. I didn't feel it all through my hands. Now we are in track mode right now, and that doesn't give you the full power, but you do have this power shot button on the steering wheel that I mentioned earlier. So if I come up here on the straight and hit power shot, and then give me that noise, and then there we go. You get about 10 seconds of really boosted power, but otherwise in track mode, you're not gonna get access to all of that. The brakes are okay. The problem is that they lack a little bit of consistency. And by that I mean the transitions between the regen and the regular brakes are not really well handled. So when you're coming into a corner and you're trying to slow down, you can almost feel like 2 steps worth of braking, and the front of the car gets a bit unsettled. It's just not really confidence inspiring. And of course the suspension, it's trying its best, but again, this thing weighs just a big sandwich under 6,000 pounds, so it's fighting a lot of weight just all over the place. There's one other big problem with driving this vehicle on the track, and that is the seats. They don't have nearly enough bolstering for the amount of body roll that this thing has. So you go into a corner like this, you turn it down in, and there I go, just right outside the seat. My arm is actually leaned up against the door. I mean, these seats are okay for street duty, but on a track, they are not ideal. You know, the funny thing is that this is pretty much better than the gas Charger. Like if you're just thinking about it from a numbers perspective, like it's quicker, it has more grip. Dare I say that the gas Charger was significantly more fun than this car? There's something about the whole experience that feels just a bit sterile. Even with all that fake engine noise, there's no drama. And you know what? I kind of miss it. Okay, I'm gonna turn off that fake exhaust for a second. On the street, things are better, but not perfect. You know, this car is a lot more comfortable driving at 70% than it is 90%. And just driving around town most of the day, yeah, it's kind of like a big, comfortable cruiser that isn't particularly offensive, except for one problem, and that is the regen. Now, if you have the regen dialed up all the way on the street, it's very grabby, and as a result, it'll make you car sick. Even if you're driving, you end up having to turn the regen like all the way down in order to make it smooth to drive. The other problem is that the throttle tuning also needs some figuring out. It's a very difficult vehicle to pull away from a stop sign smoothly with. It's just kind of always jerking you around. And for those 2 reasons, the drivability of this vehicle really suffers. If it's difficult to go smoothly and it's difficult to stop smoothly, there's not much in there for you, is there? The new Charger, it's not really a great EV, and it's not really a great performance car either. So after a full day of testing, what have we learned? We have learned that the Charger has a bit of a problem, and that is that it's not a great performance car. It doesn't have the handling. It's just kind of lazy and laconic on our track, not really enjoyable from behind the wheel. And the other problem is that it's not a great daily driver either. The problems that it has with its regenerative braking are major, and it's got kind of a floaty suspension without being all that comfortable. So if it's not good as a performance car and it's not good as a daily driver, that really bodes poorly for the fact that it costs $86,000. And yes, we're harping on that point because that's a lot of money to pay for a car that doesn't really excel in any area to us. Now, this Charger though is going to be available in different versions later this year. There will be a 4-door version coming out and one with a gas version that will certainly come with the Hurricane high output engine that we've liked so much in vehicles like the Ram 1500. So we're looking forward to testing that. But this electric Charger, its drama all feels manufactured, and those muscles, they're just for show. Thanks for watching. Oh, f*** you.